we're trying something different today. If anybody spends time living in WhatsApp over the last year, you may have seen the very organic debates that emerge between obviously Min, who is the king, kind of a stoker of our WhatsApp chats, but obviously Yves, and we met you as a part of, Min went to Atlanta. Our friend Natalia Gomez created
Mhm.
that at festival, and then you guys met as part of that, and then we just found friendship. And you've been such an amazing kind of voice in our room, and we have the upcoming event with you that we're doing with ETC at USC in a couple weeks, and here in LA. Um, but I'm just going to make sure if anybody doesn't know who these two people are, Yves Berquist, you're an AI researcher and you're director of the AI and Media Project at the ETC, which I hope you can tell us more about along the way. If anybody still doesn't
Yeah.
know, it's really cool. At that center at USC, even your team, you use frontier AI models and methods, excuse me, to help media companies develop deep insights into their content, their audiences, and the cognitive relationship between the two. And you were also the co-founder of Corto, which is an AI startup developing AI tools to make stories and audiences computable through the DNA analysis of narratives. And of course, Min is our co-founder here at Machine Cinema and our tireless Johnny Appleseed of Gen Jams and AI all over the world. He's about to hit the road again. But if for some reason you don't know everything he's done before he did all these things, he's an entrepreneur, he's been a filmmaker, he's obviously doing a lot of speaking. He's a former VC journalist and has had the pleasure of interviewing people like Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google. And today he's here to battle Yves or be friends with Yves, depending on what Yves wants us to do. I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourself or do you guys want to just jump right in?
I'll just say that ETC is funded by all the Hollywood studios, and so all the CTOs of the studios sit on our board. And we help, and also Google, Microsoft, Amazon, so big tech. So ETC is founded by George Lucas in the 90s, and this is where entertainment and technology talk to each other at very high level. And so I'm privileged to have worked there for 10 years. Very, very so I've been in AI in for 15 years. I'm, uh, as an I don't call myself an engineer, so I really don't like that term, but I'm like building things. I really love building stuff going back to like 2010. And and I was very fortunate to be born in a AI family that at the time, let's talk about '09, people thought was very fringe. So the Open Cog group and the Bankursel group. And since then, the entire field of AI has been moving closer and closer to what Ben and his team, um, their vision of sort of a more holistic AI. And I think a big part of why Min and I don't agree is that I feel like he's very rooted in the all machine learning, all deep learning, all the time philosophy of the tech industry, where I am more from the sort of the cognitive sciences side of say, there's a lot more to intelligence than just machine learning.
All right. Well, let's jump in. I mean, we've for the sake of our listeners who don't live in WhatsApp obsessively, there's a couple of key points of disagreement from the past that might be fun to get us going today. Um, and I'm quoting you guys, so you got to be careful what you say in digital spaces too. When you get called out in big debates that you're invited to, there's a key point of contention between the two of the valuation of intellectual property, which is very topical these days. I think, Min, you hold the belief that Hollywood has failed to properly monetize the vast and valuable IP portfolio. While Eve, I think you've said things like legacy IP is way overvalued. Min, do you want to lead with your provocative POV that Hollywood is failing on its own sword,
Failing or falling?
failing and falling? I don't know,
Failing and
like
falling.
they're doing badly.
Yeah, I mean, I well, I suspect 2 things are gonna happen. First of all, hey, everybody, I'm not sure how this debate will go because I'm not sure if Yves and I agree more now or disagree more now, but, um, I I suspect that legacy IP is going to become more valuable over time, just like when I think about the blogosphere and the New York Times, right? Like, I think when the blogosphere arrived, I think it was fascinating to think that everybody was like, "Oh my god, all the top, you know, media is done," but then that just didn't come true. In fact, the noise cause the big brands to become even more valuable. Um, and then at the same time, um, I can't help but think that one, Hollywood is very bad at like cultivating content and cultivating and monetizing that content. And I think they've been very slow to embrace things like streaming and slow to probably going to be. I know I've seen some posts that, oh, they're speeding up, that they're getting into AI as fast as they can, but I'm very skeptical that they can move as fast as the opportunities that AI provides. And so I look at, like, I think what was interesting about Sora 2 um, was that Logan Paul was the celebrity that kind of popped off because he was willing to be remixable. So I'm not, to what extent is Disney going to be willing to do that with OpenAI? I don't know, but yeah, those maybe those are a few starting thoughts. You know, I don't know what you think there, Eves, but yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, a couple things. On the monetization of IP, um, so as part of Cordo, we do a lot of audience intelligence work for big brands and studios. So we're like, what is culture for Gen Alpha? What is culture for Gen Z? And the real interesting thing that we see is that um, uh, a lot of brands, for example, generally sort of the media space, the big corporate media space, and by that I mean sort of brands, advertisers, studios, is um, behind on culture, right? So Gen Z, Gen Alpha culture is significantly different, and definitely edgier than what brands and studios realize. And so a lot of our work, for example, so it's like the the Star Wars and the Marvels of the world are for the most part popular with sort of millennials, Gen X, like people in my generation and younger. But like the new generation coming into the market has a lot less affinity for it. And so what we're seeing in the market very clearly is a thirst for um, culture becoming dangerous again, and for a lot of fresh and new stories and universes, right? Um, and it's something that has to do with neuroscience. The brain tends to want to train on new data, right? And so there's only so much you can reinvent. I think Star Wars is a little bit different because it is such a rich universe that you can just really mine it across the board, and Disney's been really good at that. Um, but you got to be really careful because there's a diminishing return to trying to develop new and fresh stories about something that is really not fresh, like the Harry Potter series, for example. Um, and so the evidence that we're seeing in the data is that um, that IP is still valuable, but the value is kind of falling very fast. And there's a huge need for studios to develop new franchises and new IP. I think this is where this community comes along for me is we're actually building systems for the studios to monitor who is in the digital sphere is growing their audiences the fastest, and who can who has content that can be sort of licensed and imported in more sort of a linear media format. Um, I mean, I don't want to sort of, it's already a long answer, so I don't want to be too long. But to just real quick on the deployment of AI. I mean, look, um, those are huge corporations, like huge, massive corporations with just an enormous amount of stakeholders. Um, I think they're moving as fast as they can. They are enormously educated. They know as much as people in this community know about seed dance and Kling and all these other models. Their ability to deploy is really hamstrung by so many different sort of legal issues and talent issues, and the world of a studio is a very constrained world where your ability to do something on something like AI is very constrained to the point that I've advised many studios to essentially create a capability outside of the studio, like just to create their own AI studio completely outside of the studio and grow it separately from the studio because it probably would be a lot easier and a lot quicker to build stuff.
But I guess I wanna I think there's so many nuances to this, but I think what to me is the provocative POV that I've heard you put up that I think is actually quite a rallying cry for creators. The way you've often told people to like I don't know, it's some version of like do things that are dangerous, do things that scare you, in terms of like explore the opportunities. But it's in the context of you saying that legacy IP is way overvalued, and almost to say that that opportunity for what people now have access to express themselves is the bet. Maybe I'm paraphrasing too much, but that's what
Mhm.
I'm taking it away from it. Can you qualify that? And Min, I don't know if you want to even respond to it too. That does that overlook the point that Logan Paul just like walks in and wins in a way that lots of people showed up to Sora 2 and didn't succeed the way he does? Or are you playing a longer game by making that comment that you're saying that this is about the next generation? Excuse me, Jake Paul. Forgive me, Jay. I got the wrong Paul.
Oh, it's Jake Paul. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Fact checking on the fly. We have community fact checking. Min, do you want to restate it because that's my takeaway from the debate? But I don't know if Yves,
Again?
you want to jump in.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I'll mute.
Sorry, what was that? Oh, Doug, you're unmuted.
I muted him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, Eves is the one that is saying that legacy is way overvalued, right?
That's right. I'm just saying. Do you
Yeah.
agree with my paraphrase that seems to be the friction of what he's saying, but also the underlying question is how does Jake Paul win so easily if that's true, or is Eves making a case
Well,
for the long game?
I mean, I do think that it's so there's an irony to me when I see people like Matthew McConaughey, even though I really like that he's saying what he's saying about AI voices and things like that. I I think there's an irony to me when a celebrity is talking about, hey, we have to embrace AI because they are the ones that stand to benefit the most, and it's the people who have no name that are likely going to be hurt the most, right? Because like it seems to me like we are systematically deconstructing like different aspects of the almost like the creator supply chain, right? Like who can create what and when and how do you monetize that and how does a person go from writer's room to showrunner and all that kind of stuff seems like it's very vulnerable. And so but at the same time someone that Matthew McConaughey who has a name who has a voice, they this person is going to benefit the most from being able to be remixed. So I think there's all it's simultaneously the irony to me when SAG-AFTRA or whatever is like, hey, this is bad, that this is happening. It's like, well, you're also like memifying what you're expanding what is valuable about you by putting yourself more out there. Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are even more recognizable, right? So I don't know. I think there's a weird dynamic there, right? Um,
I think it goes back. So my crusade is to shift the debate from the technology to the market. The reality of the media market is that the demand is stable. There's never going to be more than 24 hours in a day, right? So you can't expand that market. The supply of content is exploding, right? And so when that happens, then you're really completely 100% in the war for attention, which is why my startup is doing what it's doing, which is to essentially tell studios and brands where culture is and predict where it's going. The 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 rule is who can build an audience, who has an audience. So I give you an example. So um, if you take the top 10% of social conversations, right? The all of the um, and you count the number of cultural objects that are being talked about in the top 10% of this conversation. In 2015, it was 39. So cultural objects would be like a film, a TV show, an artist, stuff like that. 2015, there was 39. Um, last year's 320. So there's just an enormous fragmentation of the market where you just have a bunch of people who have these like micro audiences. Um, and so that's a huge problem for if you're trying to make a living from it. right? And so the rule of the game is who can build an audience, and audience building is really going to be the name of the game. And then suddenly you have the studios who are in a position to afford to hire people like us to tell them, okay, well, this is the landscape. Like we're listening to 10 million accounts and looking at which ones are growing the fastest and which universes are part of what. And you pick these 10 people to build content around. I think Gen AI makes the market problem of media marginally worse, but that's not really the story. The story is that the market is nuts. Gen AI, now Gen AI, the fact that people are watching, like my son is 16, watches Netflix maybe like 3 times a year, right? So that's the problem. And that's why I think those legacy IP are overvalued, because if you look at the data, Gen Z, Gen Alpha doesn't really watch Star Wars or Marvel, or they're going to watch YouTubers and stuff like that. Which is why YouTube is so powerful as the number one media company in the world. Um, and my work is really to really help the mainstream media community understand this and develop weapons to fight the war for attention, because I was raised on film lots. I was a kid and my mother was a costumer, so which is the greatest place to be when you're a kid. I just want my son, who's like, I have another kid who's 9 months old. I want him to be like, to be able to go to film lots and walk through film lots, because I was at Paramount yesterday. It's the most magical thing in the world to walk through the Paramount lot. So my enemy is like social media companies. And I'm really trying to get the media industry to speed up its weaponization, its weapon systems against to regain market share in the war for attention. If that makes sense.
Do you include YouTube in that list of social media companies? Is that or that's clearly a
Um,
contributor and more like a TV
yeah,
channel? Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's essentially sort of a hybrid of the studio and and the TikTok, right?
So
Um,
let me understand kind of the way you're positioned, because I one thing that's interesting about the way you guys often debate in the group is that I think Min, I don't know if it's generically tech optimist, but I think you often post things, at least in the way that our LLM interpreted your chats and gave me some feedback for this step debate prep. But that you're often interested in the potential of technology, and Eves, for better for worse, you often have a reaction to hype. But to connect this to what you just said, it's all about audiences.
yeah,
It's all about somebody's well, isn't the whole point is that we live in a world that people leverage those social media tools that you're calling the enemies as the way that they decentralize environment
sure,
and generate
absolutely.
audience. But how are they the villain and simultaneously the gas in that
Um, they're the villain because they take market share away, and market share is essentially time on platform, right? Which is how Netflix measures success, which I think is the right way to do it. Um, they're also, you can use them against themselves to, I think in the future we're going to see a lot more um, digital creators um, having access. So the thing that digital creators don't have is, one, the ability to understand their audiences with data, the stuff that we do, and two, the ability to throw $200 million at a marketing campaign, right? I think if what we're seeing is studios interested in taking a digital creator that has a very strong voice, very strong universe, is building an audience really fast, and bring them into the studio to do two things. One, develop the IP in what I think is really the future of entertainment, which is immersive, multi-platform, personalized entertainment. Right. So it's like Star Wars across AR, VR, streaming, theatrical, video games, and so on and so forth. And number two, throw just a shit ton of marketing money behind it to grow, essentially to accelerate their growth, to expand the domain of the possible for telling their story in terms of technology, and bring a lot of expertise to that in terms of like, hey, what did this look like as a video game? And then really help them market it. And so I'm really excited about that future. I think that future really is very, very exciting to me. I think it's very scary for talent because the competitive environment becomes just a lot more intense. And those are people. I mean, I'm not talking about like the big stars, but like writers. They have families. They have they need to make money, and it's really scary for them. I totally understand that, right? And so my heart goes out to them. And but the you can't really fight the market. Yeah, the market's always right.
Min, do you have a
I
response to that? And I'll
yeah,
just
I
say
know,
really, we're experimenting with something, everybody. If anybody uh, has questions, or and again, I'm going to try to represent questions in the chat, but also it would be fun to experiment if anybody wants to jump in here. But I'm going to need you to limit your input to like 30 seconds. So I'm happy
yeah,
to open up.
let's not let people jump in quite yet because
Not yet. I'm just opening it
yeah,
up
yeah.
to later in the
Uh,
second half. But please respond, man. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
think there is something that I actually disagree with both Fred and Eves on, which is that I think the surface area of audience is still there's still more to go. I think there's a lot. Like Fred and I always have this argument that we got oversaturated, and the evidence for this is that we had a golden age of television and people got fatigued. And I just don't think that. I think what I saw in because about a decade ago, I was going to Hong Kong a lot, and I was interacting with a lot of science fiction writers, and their impression was that their audience was too small, because science fiction is a genre that you kind of have to get familiar with first, and then you start to appreciate it. And as that audience grows, then you have a larger and larger audience, which gets like certain ideas, like I don't know, like a robot that has consciousness, or stuff like that, or like just society catches up or whatever, right? And so like I do think that that is. I think that's true. I think when I think about the biggest films that have ever been made, like Avatar or whatever, it's like, yeah, it made $2 billion, but that didn't mean that 3 billion people saw it, right? There's still more to go, I think, and
Yeah,
so
but I
in
mean,
that sense, I
the
think that
cake is the same. I mean, the cake is the same size, right? Science fiction takes eyeballs from something else. What my point is, I think we agree.
yeah.
The genres and the tastes are going to shift, but the cake will never grow, right?
But
The
see, that's where I'm
market.
not. That's where I'm not sure. Like, I think that I think the market can grow because there's a limited amount of people who appreciate a particular genre. I mean, I agree to some extent that there is a limited amount of eyeballs at a finite point of time. Like right now, there's X amount of people on people literally right now looking on TikTok, like scrolling, right? But at the same time, I think like there's always more to go for um a particular genre or a particular piece of media. It can grow to more and more audiences, and
Yes, but
that
that's
is up
different than
to.
the market. That's different than the market. The market is not growing. The
But there's
total
still.
number of people who you can
Yeah.
reach, that is not growing, because unless the population is growing, there's never going to be more than 24 hours in a day. So, yes,
Yeah.
properties, IP genres will grow their market share within this market. But my point is the pie is finite. The pie is not going to grow. And that's a very unique feature of the media market. Other markets, for example, autonomous driving is a very small market right now, but it's growing very fast. The media market is not. Supply is exploding, demand is stable.
Yeah,
That's my
I
point.
don't. Yeah, I hear you on a population, but I don't like when I go to say, I don't know, Vietnam or something, it's just like t- I I I'm unconvinced that everybody's on TikTok that could be on TikTok, or everybody's on, you know, or when I go to China, I'm not convinced that everybody that could be on Douyin is on. I feel like there's still more growth there to happen. And simultaneously, I think there's more growth to be had in terms of genre. And then I also think this is maybe a slightly orthogonal point, but I do think that we maybe a decade ago, 5, 10 years ago, started to think that there's a zero sum game with media. And I think I've made this point in the chat before, but like I think that YouTube, like I am an addict of YouTube and TikTok. Well, not TikTok, but of YouTube. In that I cross the lines across memes a lot, and so like I feel like I try to participate a lot in meme culture. And what my impression of meme culture is that it is not a zero sum game. It is a very kind of like uh, because you know about this thing, you can appreciate this thing over here. Because you know about these five things, you know what, Ohio final bosses. I forget what the meme is, but like, like there's these like kind of things where I feel like with Gen Z, increasingly see there are people who are participating in multiple aspects of culture at the same time, and therefore can appreciate it's not even a zeitgeist anymore because people are like in little they're participating in their little bubbles, which have access to I don't know, this is a little abstract, but they're participating in a whole other ecosystem versus Star Wars. I'm in the bubble of Star Wars. I must appreciate everything within Star Wars versus YouTube is this like sprawling meme verse where I participate in one meme which is connected to another. And in order to appreciate that entire culture, I have to be participating in it as an ecosystem rather than as an isolated thing, which I consider Star Wars to be, right? So I think those are kind of where I think maybe where our fundamental disagreement might be. How we look at the media ecosystem. You know,
I mean, as I'm listening to you guys, and I don't mean to be dragged into your debate, man. You called me out. I'm not here to debate with you, but I'm just
I called you
I'm
out, Fred. What do you
I'm
guys
just
say, Fred?
I'm just here to hear what you guys have to say. I'm just trying to make sense of these words like zero sum, some notion of infinity is actually infinity. I just having experienced the blunt force of television, like I remember a time when a cable reality show at 9 o'clock at night would literally get, and I'm talking about like a A&E show. I'm not even talking about American Idol, would get 18 million viewers at 9 o'clock at night, to watch a docu-soap about people that sell duck calls. I'm just saying that has redistributed. There's no show on this thing called television because the ages have disappeared, the median age has gone away, and to a degree, it's redistributed to other. Now, what I think is interesting about what you're saying is that maybe even that measure of zero sum is measuring half-hour things called TV shows, 2-hour things called movies, this sort of world of short things that are now sort of, even becoming personalized and have I think advertising feels like this ooze that is starting to seep into different ways to monetize. But, like, I don't sense I hear Eve's point that it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about something that creates fan growth and creates sort of long-standing IP value that you might ever put into a theme park, I don't know if that infinity exists, but maybe I'm suddenly thrusting myself
But
into this. I think I
What
agree
you
with that
see
conservative position, but I see what you're saying, that there are new markets growing.
well, that's
what
why
you
I think
see in the
Marty's.
data what
Yeah.
you see in the data is an enormous fragmentation of, you had sort of mainstream culture doesn't exist anymore. And so you have an enormous fragmentation of um, different creative voices, each with, 10, 20,000 followers, right? And you just have like an ocean, an infinity of this. And the game is attention, right? And um, you can say what you want about Trump, but he is where he is because he has understood the game is attention. And unfortunately, that game is pushing people to say like stupider and more outrageous things to gain attention. But that is the game. That is the market. The market is attention. That's the game, right? And so whoever aggregates the most attention will aggregate the most profit and the most resources across the board. That is a universal rule. And so for this community, it's really important to understand this because um, if you want to be a creator, if you want to be a player in this world, you really have to pay very close attention to um, your audience, and a lot of people in this community, I hope, will develop a creative voice that is unique enough and powerful enough that people will be like, oh, I just really vibe with this creator. I really vibe with the stories and these characters, right? And for those people, the studios are paying very, very close attention and really eager to then bring this IP in the studio and kind of blow it up from a platform perspective and also blow it up from an attention getting and marketing perspective. Does that make sense? That's the
Yeah,
game that is being played today.
Yeah, and I think the irony of that, now I think I'm unfortunately agreeing with you, which is sad. But I think the like when Fred was speaking, I started thinking about Marty Supreme because and when you're talking, I feel like it's similar, which is that I do feel like because of what you're saying, you as a creator have to be kind of everywhere as much as possible to break through the noise. If you're trying to do something new and you cannot rely on the big kahunas to distribute you, then you have to do something really weird or strange, or or you're on the microdrama circuit. I don't know, or are you on the microdramas and you're doing an IRL activation and you're doing something else, and the only way to survive is by being insane. You know,
I think there's two things. So I think there's two things. One is you always have to be true to your voice, to your creative voice, right? You can't fake your way to building an audience. That's not going to happen. Your voice and your creative vision, um, it needs to be true, and you need to really draw from it because at the end of the day, what people will appreciate is that. And also you have to have some sense of strategy and competition. I think everyone, creatives now that want to be a player in the war for attention, have to understand that they're competing against Disney and Netflix, right? And so they have to be hypersensitive to strategy. They have to be hypersensitive to the market. They have to be hypersensitive to competition. And so it's this dialogue, which by the way is that dialogue is happening traditionally in Hollywood, right? Since the very beginning of Hollywood, dialogue between the people who have a sense of the market and the creatives. And in that dialogue is where success happens, right? It's like how much of your creative voice can you express in a way that is very distinct and differentiated and new and fresh, because audiences today across the board, they want new stuff, they want fresh stuff. And the challenge is there's so much content out there, is that there's just a lot of new stuff all the time. So it used to be that if you were a brilliant creative, like a Breaking Bad, right, would come in, it's like new and fresh, and people really gravitate towards it, and it becomes very, very popular. And there's one Breaking Bad, every 10 years. There's one Breaking Bad, we're moving into a world. There's one Breaking Bad every week. So it's like, well, how do you keep the pace of innovation and novelty and freshness? Which is why you have a lot of podcasters and bloggers that say stupid shit all the time just to double down and one up each other on the stupid and outrageous stuff that they're saying, is because it's sort of a race to the bottom, if you will, about that. And that's really the challenge for me.
So can I ask you both a question? Because I think it's underlying this observations of legacy IPs and their advantages and, ongoing or temporary. And we're starting to talk about new creators. And I see people like Blacklight chiming into the chat who I think are a great example of people doing the thing that we're talking about here, which is what does a new creator do? Like, we often talk about this like AI native environment that has now emerged. And we often ask ourselves these questions of like, well, what does it mean to live in a world that has this new flatness to it in terms of everybody has capabilities or new distribution landscape that YouTube is firmly established. So what is the playbook for a new creator now? I mean, clearly Matthew McConaughey and James Earl Jones's voice, like there's a lot of things that are just going to hang out for a while they have market value and advertisers and people that like to pay for things are still into things that they already know about. So they're adapting to this AI native space of how do they retain their walled gardens of value. But when someone like Blacklight's, hustling, or like a lot of people in the chat today that are on their own journey, are we meant to believe that we now have this superpower of data and supposedly everything is algorithmic and all taste and choice can be informed by the overwhelming power of an A/B test? Or is it, I think you've said things like this, Eve, that almost sound like a keep it human note of like, do things that are dangerous, do things that are uncomfortable. Like, how do we actually play in this new sandbox? And maybe that's like a hyper speculative and we're all just going to iterate. But I'm curious if either of you are actually circling that answer, which is so important to everybody in the
Yeah.
community.
Look
And
where no
and,
one's
and do you
looking.
want to take a stab, or because Min went,
There
you
you go.
went
Go for
last?
it. Go for
Yeah.
it.
No, it's a very simple answer. Look where no one's looking. Go where no one's going. what are the genres? What are the stories? Like I have a fascination for African mythology. Shit, that's an area that's completely untouched. Go look into um African folk tales. Like literally go where no one's going and look at where no one's looking. Um that's that's my advice, you know. Don't try to do like another Game of Thrones or another Star Wars and all that shit. Just go where no one's going, look where no one's looking, and then from that universe, really apply your creative voice to it and your very unique sensitivities to it. Make it really personal to you, but within a universe that feels new and different. Do not do more of what's already around. That will kill you.
I'm gonna pause for a second. Min, I know you have to be somewhere, and and maybe we stick around longer with you, Eve, if other folks wanna do a Q&A with you. But, and just sort of being mindful of time today. Um, Man, I think one topic you had brought up in prep for this is sort of really thinking about the LLM companies, which are the planets in outer space that are starting to create new forms of gravity, or suns. I don't know, whichever metaphor works. Um, what do both of you take in about is it the impact that they're having at this point now that we're starting to see patterns? You wanted to sort of throw this in today. What's sort of like a statement you want to throw down?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't remember all of our, Yves' and I's kind of debates on this on topic, but I am kind of more maybe lean slightly more accelerationist, right? In that I think that the LLM, the big tech companies are going to get somewhere, and it's staggering the kind of progress that they've made, in the last year, let alone 3 weeks, and so I don't see why it isn't going to continue. I think Yan LeCun is definitely out there saying world models are the future, and I see that too. But I think I'm curious because you're in the cognitive universe, so I'm curious. One thought I've had recently is that Yan LeCun is out there saying that world models are where you get real intelligence, but my sense, or where you eventually land in AGI. But my sense is that sure, like this is a physical object. It's a real physical object, and it's hard to understand the physics of it. And once you understand that, you can unlock a lot of value. But at the same time, like my brain is the one that is cognizing that this is an object in the first place. My brain and the language that comes out of my brain is where the intelligence actually is. There's no intelligence in the universe, right?
Why do you have
Outside of our brain.
horseradish on your desk? You have
What's that?
why do you have horseradish on your desk? That's fucked up, man. Why
It's
do you have
it's
a can of horseradish?
it's a care product.
That's even worse. Sorry.
I got sleep gummies, I don't know, whatever.
Wow, dude.
Uh, uh, Clay. But yeah, I feel like there's no other path to greater intelligence outside of humans. It's hard for me to imagine us other than studying humans more. I don't see where world models play a factor. And for that reason, I kind of look upon the tech companies as, hey, I get why they want so much GPU, why they want so much compute, you know, because they just have to throw
Well,
data and all that. I don't know. I'm just throwing out things there to see your reaction, and we'll get into it.
yeah, I mean, so I think the heart of our disagreement is I feel that you are too quick to repeat like OpenAI press release kind of language, right? And I've been in this business long enough as someone who builds shit and who knows how hard it is to do that, to take everything that comes out of the Bay Area with a huge grain of salt. Um, if you really look, I mean, I've been doing this and looking into this for 15 years. If you look into the nitty gritty of how an LLM works and what happens if you scale it, um, it is almost impossible for me to believe that this particular methodology alone, so it is very powerful at a bunch of things, but alone does not constitute intelligence or represent intelligence. And I'm not going to get into the details, but the high level is that what people don't really understand is there's an enormous amount of human fine tuning involved in the performance that you're seeing, right? Which means that it is not, it's represented as autonomous intelligence, but it's really, really not. And all of that fine tuning that humans input into the models is actually intelligence that is extreme. Like if you're trying to make it completely autonomous, we're very, very far from that. So in other words, like it's supervised learning. It's not, it's presented as unsupervised learning, but it is actually really, really supervised learning. And I really highly encourage everyone. I have a free PDF copy of Ben's book called Engineering General Intelligence. I think I shared it on the WhatsApp. I'm happy to reshare it. Um, so this is a book called Engineering General Intelligence by Ben Goertzel and his team. I wasn't a part of it, but I grew up in that team of people, which by the way includes Shane Legg, who's the co-founder in DeepMind. Um, he brings, so it's a bear, like it's a hundreds of pages, like you gotta brace yourself. But what it does, it really does a really good job of unpacking all of the different elements of intelligence and how each of these elements can be tackled from a modeling and compute standpoint. And what you see is, and this is called the neural symbolic AI school of thought. What you see it is there's just a hell of a lot more methodologies and systems, for example, around knowledge creation than just machine learning, which is what, LLMs rely on very much. And so the difference that we have is you, I feel like, are too quick in buying the notion, that Sam Altman saying, "Oh, we're just going to scale the stuff that we're doing now, and that's going to get us to AGI next year," and it's just not true. Um, I think far. We're not like 50 years away, but I think we're at least 10 years away from true general intelligence, which I will define as one single application that can drive a car, fly a plane, learn a language, and trade stocks. Now, if you take an LLM today, it can do, it can pretend to talk to you about things and process information really efficiently, but it can't fly a plane or drive a car, let alone trade stocks, right? So um, that's kind of where we separate, I think.
So, Min, I know you need to go, but you've been officially been diminished to being a Sam Altman fanboy, I think is what I took away from Eve's response, which means, Eve, you did show up to fight today. You just came in for uppercuts right at the end of the boxing match.
I'm
Right,
just kind of speeding
right
it
as
up because it was a little bit too soft, and I just want people to get the people need to get what they paid for.
Min, do you have a final haymaker throw here to sort of
I mean, I
end the
I I will say I am bullish. I'm not just bullish on Sam. I'm bullish on the ecosystem of San Francisco. I think I don't know that Sam is going to win, right? I am bullish on Zuck, just because he's the only founder that has total control of his company. But um, I do think that we have been making staggering progress, faster progress than I even would have expected. And even the example of OpenClaw is shocking, right? It's just like all we had to do was create a bunch of files that told it to regularly check in on you, and suddenly it feels more alive, right? I'm not saying that it is alive, but it is becoming more and more useful over time to the point where, hey, just because I put a soul.md file and a cron jobs and blah, 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 now I have this system, within a year or two, everybody presumably could have a system that is proactively responding to them, right? Proactively responding to things in their environment. And therefore, that is a different type of data that it's receiving, different type of intelligence that we're going to get from it. And so I think that from that perspective, this is where kind of where I kind of sit generally is I'm just kind of like I'm open to how things are going, and I'm very bullish on what is currently happening because it is shocking. We have physics breakthrough or physics experiments, we have biology experiments, we have The medical profession is changing already. So like things that I who have been bullish for since the beginning, since ChatGPT 3.5, did not expect us to be here today in 2026. And so I always kind of am like checking myself. I'm trying not to be like I'm simultaneously trying not to be wrapped up in, oh, Kling's the latest thing, CNET's the latest thing, whatever, while simultaneously being like, whoa, I gotta take a step back and think here that what I experience is a bubble. What I experience is extremely fast, but I also have to also try to project out, you know, how does what I'm experiencing today look like what everybody could experience if it was successfully deployed? If a billion people could experience what I experience right now, right? Like that is craziness because what I experience is, hey, this tool that is checking on my emails or checking on my calendar, making sure that I'm getting my job done. It's my manager now, right? This is not what I experienced a month ago. That's craziness, right? And so like what if everybody has a coach now, and maybe it's a shitty coach, maybe it's stupid, but it's better than not having one. And so, what does that look like? And so that I think this is where kind of my bullishness comes from, and my optimism comes from. I will fully admit to being kind of like willfully optimist in a world where I have to on it. Like I'm very active on X, and I deal with anti AI people daily and so I feel like I'm kind of refining myself, but I also feel like I have to be optimistic, willfully optimistic in a world where there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of people who are scared and who have a lot of fear. And so I'm like, okay, what is the answer to that? How do I figure this out? I don't have the answer, but I have to be open to where this is going. I do have to run. I'm so sorry. Um,
Well,
and on that
I
note, but
appreciate
I
you
hope that was a good note to end on.
giving us
But
50
yeah.
minutes of pure civil behavior, guys. I think we're all pretty disappointed at both of
I
you.
wanna do it again, I love you.
But
I love
Yeah, we
talking to
should
you.
we should do it on a regular basis. What I would
Yeah.
say is the absolute test is, do we have features and applications today, right? Is what you said, man. I think is brilliant. It's like, do I have something I can use today that makes a huge difference in my life? And I'll take an analogy. Is, I've been going to CES for 10 years, and every year you had people there who were like, "Oh, is autonomous driving next year," and the year after was like, "No." It was like, "Oh, no, no, it's definitely next year." So, and we have autonomous driving today, right? But it took a hell of a lot more money, effort, failure than people were willing to admit in the tech industry to get to autonomous driving, right? And so my point is, the future will appear and will be a reality. I think we're deluded if we think that it's going to be quick and painless. It is going to be long and painful. Um, and by the way, the scientific community does not agree on what the next step in AI development is, right? It's not like we're not even there yet. It's like we don't even agree on like where to go, which I think is really interesting. But that said, what Mean said is really interesting. We haven't yet explored all of the benefits of the current kind of group of models and methods that we have around AI today, right? What I'm saying is like the next big breakthrough is not around the corner.
well, while we're here, obviously you've won by some version of digital TKO, in that your opponent had too many things to do.
You ran.
But no, thank you
Ran away,
so
I'm
much.
sorry, I'm running away.
No, no worries, man.
Well,
Thank you. But
it's funny because I think I'm going to an event where Sam Altman's gonna be, so right now, so
the humble brag. Oh
Go
my
tell
god.
him he can go fuck
yeah.
himself, and you can quote me on that.
Well, look, let's use this time to do some Q&As and follow-ups. Obviously, if people want to insert themselves into any discussion points, try to limit your soliloquy, and let's all hear diverse opinions. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah, first, speaking as someone with 40 years in combat sports, yeah, not bad. Um, the one thing that men brought out that I think was lost was the idea of participation. Participate. And by that, I mean that historically, all this business was built up around media as a product, something that I went out and bought. But now, not only are the are people using YouTube for memes and whatever, but they're using it to figure out how to fix something, how to do something. So the audiences that you were saying go where no one's gone before, it's not like there's some new demographic waiting out there, but that people's behavior, what actually is going to motivate them from a content point of view has evolved to where their experience with media, just like in the 18th century, if you own books, that said a certain thing about your social status and what you were interested in. And now we got books about, how to garden, how to do this, how to do that. And I think that as creators, we now have the flexibility to be able to bring cinematic qualities into areas of media and expression and audience that weren't possible before. And just as the silliest example, out of combat sports in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I know a kid who's building a brand and is his own kind of media creator, but he's going after people who are also passionate about the sport. And it's not just charting his journey. His end point is to make instructional videos that he's going to get paid $60 a pop for. And I think that as creators, if we start looking at our audiences differently and look at the verbs that are dominating their night, what are they doing? And then aligning with what they're doing, we can start to do the storytelling that can provide a sustainable lifestyle. Now, whether that translates into having the same type of position as you would have had as a showrunner of a huge popular show, I don't know. I don't think so. But we can't just look at audiences as butts on a seat who want to consume. So that's my soliloquy. Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Agreed. I have
Well,
to run in 2 minutes, just
okay, so
FYI.
we're right at an hour
But
anyway.
if you have
That's
questions, just hit me up on
fine.
LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn, or you can ask questions in the WhatsApp. I'm kind of infrequently checking it, but LinkedIn is a really good place to to chat with me if you want. I'm
I
just
I love what you
yeah.
just did, Eve. That was like Obama and John McCain, if anybody remembers. They were in the middle of the debate, and McCain had a long statement, and Obama was like, "Yeah, I'm good. Cool."
Yeah.
Winston, I know you just put your hand down because we're probably out of time. Look, feedback welcome on this format. Obviously, if people want to pitch me as debaters, not shillers. I know a lot of people then like to sell things they're working on. I think today we did a really great deep dive into things that have been percolating organically in the community. So if there's other topics and people we want to bring up or even chase down, let me know. We'll do our best to fill it up. I think somebody brought up the idea that we should do a sea dance, this thing that we've been starting to call an emergency meeting, which is more like it's something that we're all in the mind. We try to do that next week, I think, once everybody's got their hands on it, but we'll work with the team on our side to see if we can pull that off. We do have a really fun Gen Talks traditional one next week. I'm hoping to lock in, but Jesse Wallens, who I met kind of here in the co-work space I work at here in LA, he did that Snoop Dogg Death Row AI video that some of us
Oh,
saw
that's
this last
awesome.
week. And also, a guy that I just recently connected with, Halsey Burgund, who is the guy that created "In the Event of a Moon Disaster," which is like this kind of like really old film that was using deep fake and stuff early on to do documentaries. So very interesting early player to the space, but he won an Emmy for that. Anyway, next week's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for showing up to something different. Eves, thank you for playing along. I hope the good
Yeah, anytime.
the
By
silly
the way, I
playing.
love this community and I wanna help it as much as I can. Um, so love you guys and love what you and Mint have done, and really am so excited and bullish for all of you creators and creatives, because I think we're really going to see an explosion of creative, and I think you all have a major role to play in the future of media. So let me know how I can help.
Awesome. Well, we know how to reach you. You're frequently in the chat. Thanks, everybody. And I hope we will see you next week. Have a great rest of your week.